The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NBA Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NBA Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest stories in the NBA.
The NBA offseason is winding down, and Cam Thomas remains without a contract.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast.
A lot of uncertainty surrounding Cam Thomas's contract, but it's safe to assume that that is the role he wants. Starting guard, probably paying him somewhere in that range. It doesn't look like he's going to get it, but ultimately long-term, if that's where he wants to be, how do you feel about him being in that position for a team that is trying to make a deep playoff run?
Well, it's interesting because you look around and he will look at Jalen Green making $35 million a year, Emmanuel Quickly in the same ballpark. These kind of guys that you can make an argument that Cam Thomas is just a better player than. And yet there seem to me to be a lot of valid reasons that maybe he is not that caliber of player of, piece to a really good playoff team. So I think that the market is maybe correcting at the worst possible time for him. And he might be getting screwed right now, but I don't think that it is unjustified, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And I think this is poor timing for Cam Thomas. And I would understand the comparisons that he's had. Like I've reported that his camp went into negotiations with some comparisons to guys like Jalen Green, Emmanuel Quickly, Jordan Poole, whoever you want to say in those contracts. And with no teams having cap space and also this being a new CBA, it just doesn't seem like he's going to get that. But in another world, there's a scenario where Cam Thomas gets paid on his rookie deal like a Jalen Green or like those players that he's in a similar tier to, and it just hasn't worked out that way for him. And in his case, that could be, hundreds of millions of dollars that he lost out on. So I understand the frustration, but yeah, I mean, how do you feel about, because I think when you're talking about whether Cam Thomas is going to be a long-term starter in the NBA and with the Nets, it's interesting to see this offseason, the trend of NBA teams kind of going away from the off-ball scorers who are really like shot-first guys. Like that archetype seems like it's being valued less than ever before, whether you talk about, guys like Norman Powell or Colin Sexton or Malik Monk, who's supposedly been on the trade block and really hasn't garnered much interest. Just all those different guys don't seem to be valued by NBA teams. So is that surprising to you? And do you agree with kind of that player archetype, how front offices are approaching with what their market value is supposed to be?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. And I generally do. Like the bar to be the guy or one of the top 2 guys on a good NBA offense, 25, 30% usage is just so high. I mean, if you're not the A+ passer playmaker, then you need to be scoring like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who I think we can agree is, maybe a tier 2, tier 3 kind of passer and floor reader, but you can't say enough about his scoring. Maybe Jalen Brunson falls in the same bucket. And then on the other hand, you have all around playmakers that can do everything. Like you think about Jokic and Embiid when he's healthy and, who's become a great passer and guys like that. So the bar is just so high to have the ball in your hands all the time for a really good NBA team. And the thing with Cam Thomas, and he's gotten better at pretty much everything you could have asked of him. Like he's, if not great, shown improvements in all these areas. And yet, is he good enough to have the ball in his hands all the time? Probably not. And if not, is he providing enough value everywhere else to command the $25-30 million a year on a really good team? Like, I think he's gotten better on defense and maybe better as an off-ball offensive player and, cutter and passer. But the answer, unfortunately, is no, probably.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily disagree with you. And I've spoken about this at length because I've done so much coverage of CT and the contract situation. And it really is just that. There's so few guys that can be on the ball. And if Cam isn't on the ball, where is he providing value to warrant the $30+ million that he wants in free agency? Those flashes in those other areas of his game just haven't been there up to this point. And we'll get into, each side of the ball. Let's start on offense, though. And let's just start with his scoring ability, because obviously that's the main calling card. And if you are going to be that, as you said, that, lead guy who has the ball in your hands, your scoring ability has to be just astronomical. And Cam has flashed elite scoring ability. There were questions about his efficiency that, went up to, I think, a little slightly above league average last season in the games that he did play in. But when you look at what he's done, how he's changed throughout his career, how do you feel about his scoring ability, the efficiency, and the process? Is it something where you think what he does in that area really warrants him having the ball as much as he's going to want to?
Yeah, I mean, last year he was well over a 30% usage, and I don't think that's a winning formula for 99.5% of guys in the league. And I'm not even saying that as a slight to Thomas. And, I don't even think if you asked him, do you want the ball that much? I don't think he would maybe be as excited about it as you might think. Maybe if he's on a more talented offensive roster, his usage goes down. And I think, for whatever you want to say about Cam Thomas, I think he would understand that. And if he's playing with Kyrie, he would defer some shots. KD, James Harden, these guys that he entered the league with. His offensive co-star, if he had one last year, was Cam Johnson, Dennis Schroeder, and then the off-ball guys like Keon, Tyrese Martin. These guys aren't creating shots. So I don't think his massive usage rate is totally a product of him being like, give me the ball, I want the ball. That being said, I think he's gotten to the point, I think he's a positive offensive player. There is enough catch and shooting. He's a really good, just catch and shoot guy from three, and that will always provide value. His last 2 games he played before his final hamstring strain were some of the best kind of floor reading, playmaking games of his life. 10 assists, I believe, against Chicago. And
in the last game of the season,
yeah,
it had to be for the CT discourse, it had to be the last game of the season just to leave us with that note of the last thing we see, Cam Thomas is scaling up the passing, and then he goes after the season. But
of course, but it's so fitting for his career and Nets tenure. It's this could have been all year. But it matches everything. The assist to turnover, all that stuff, all the ancillary stuff has gone up. And he's creeping right up towards, league average true shooting, if you want to use that as a very basic barometer for how efficient he is. So this is a guy that I think is a positive offensive player, and that is not quite enough, by itself. But I'd be very happy with the strides he made, just on offense over the course of his rookie contract, especially, I don't want to get too far off on a tangent, drafted 27th or whatever he was. He's outperformed that. Jalen Green's underperformed number 3 draft pick, but because of, where they were drafted, that's why the contracts have gone these different ways. But that's where I'm at on Cam Thomas offensively. Generally, he can help a good offense. It's just how much.
And you said that, he's a positive player offensively at this point, but that's not enough. And I think the reason that that's not enough in his player archetype is because of what you're giving up on the other end of the floor. And we'll get to that. But I do want to talk about the playmaking quickly, because we talked about the scoring. Obviously, that's been his calling card. But people have said, offensively, he's going to have to be more of a playmaker to warrant having the ball in his hands that much. I think we've definitely seen improvement and growth from him as a playmaker. And, I don't know if that's saying all that much, because he really couldn't go any further in the other direction. You can only go up from where he started out. So I don't want to diminish what he did, but I think we still do. If you just look at the numbers, there's a lot of advanced numbers on it. He passes the ball and generates potential assists less compared to how much he has it relative to a lot of his other guard counterparts. And I do think even in that stretch at the end of the season where he was passing more and he had a lot more 6-7 assist games, there were a couple of really big moments down the stretch of games that were close where he was missing wide open passes. And it seemed like it was just going up no matter what. So how do you feel about his playmaking growth overall?
You look at the numbers and you look at some of the film, and granted, a lot of the playmaking is basic kind of pick and roll read. Not basic, but you're hitting the roller, and then if this guy comes over, you're hitting the corner. And those are good and valuable passes, but it's regimented offense. When you watch these games, it's what you just said. It's if it gets close, if we're in clutch time, if it's like a dynamic situation, if he, catches it on the wing and it's kind of a scrambled play, you probably don't trust him to like read the floor. And there are these modes where it's just like, okay, this shot's going up. Like he's not going to pass until it is the last option. And when you are probably project to be at the highest level, a little bit more of an off-ball scoring guard, catch and shoot threes, some side pick and rolls, stuff like that, it's just easy to game plan against.
Mm-hmm.
And that is really why the offense will leave you wanting, even though we see the lobs and the dump offs to Nick Claxton. Like that is great, but it just doesn't feel like, and I don't want to say ever because he's 23, whatever. He's only played 4 years, but it really, gun to my head, it doesn't feel like the offense is going to reach a point where he's tough to game plan against in that sense.
And I understand that. And I think, for me, from the passing perspective, I think it's always been a willingness. And I think like he shows it in flashes and he might do it just enough for people to say like, look, he had this many assists in this game and it's improving. But I do think that it is what you said. Like a lot of the pick and roll stuff we see, he's operating in the pick and roll. He's snaking. He's getting to his spots with the intention completely of shooting. Like he is not looking usually to get rid of the ball. And that's not always a bad thing. Like I love players who have that kind of confidence, but I do think there's a lack of willingness. And I think that will lend itself to some issues when you're trying to be an offensive engine and have the ball as much as he's going to.
We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. With Gametime, the price you see is the price you pay. No hidden fees. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed.
The Lakers try to figure out the best way to build around Luka Doncic long term.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast.
ESPN is now, like all of us, kind of analyzing the what's next after we kind of calling it, then certainly Team Luka's calling it, the beginning of the Luka era. They have a story out, came out with one on Wednesday that asks 4 fundamental questions about the Lakers in this era. How the Lakers can build around Luka, league insiders on Austin Reeves' future, prepping for the summer of 2027, and then, LeBron James's options. These are the 4 of the big questions that popped up there. And obviously you and I have talked a lot about like what's next for the Lakers in terms of how to build. And to me, at least, those first 2 questions, what's the how can the Lakers build around Luka, and what's the future for Austin Reeves? Those 2 are very fundamentally intertwined.
Yeah, particularly once Austin is no longer considered one of the best bargains in the league. There's a quote in the piece from ESPN, which we'll put in the show notes. It's a really good breakdown of a lot of different questions facing the Lakers in the not so distant future. But there's a Western Conference executive that is quoted as saying that Austin will be making somewhere in the $30 million range, which is very consistent to what we have predicted that he will be making on his next deal. Like
no less than that. I think it could be more. I doubt it'll be less.
Yeah, I mean, Austin will be technically eligible for something along the lines of like 4 years, $220 million as a max. I don't think anybody is going to pay him that, and I would be both flabbergasted and frankly disapproving if the Lakers pay him that. Like, that's just too much for Austin Reeves. But he is going to be, whether by the Lakers or somebody else, paid, somewhere between double and triple what he's making right now. And even if you think Austin is worth that salary in a vacuum, that dramatically changes the calculus for the Lakers in trying to figure out A, the best pieces to put around Luka, and B, how to make all those best pieces fit economically, because the best pieces among superstar players or the best pieces among role players or the best pieces in whatever category you would consider Austin Reeves, like all-star adjacent, somewhere below all-star, in between high-end role player and all-star, whatever, they all cost a lot, and it's a capped league. So it becomes much more complicated.
Yeah, I'll say this. I mean, I think 35 in today's NBA salary structure, 30 million a year, 32, 33, give or take 15% off of 13 million or 30 million, I think is a very fair salary for a guy who's coming off of a season where he averaged 20 points, 6 assists, 4.5 rebounds, a steal a game. Looking at his 3-point numbers, shot 38% from 3-point range. He gets to the free throw line a lot. Like, he's a very effective player. So I think that from a financial standpoint, that is 100% in line with what Reeves ought to be earning. I don't have a problem with that, but I agree with you. It does change the calculus of how you think about him in terms of value, because that now he goes from being wildly underpaid to appropriately paid, and that just slots differently with your team.
And you have to think more, really quick, you have to think more carefully about how much you believe in Luka and Austin, or Luka and whatever 30 to 50 to 60 to whatever $1 million player you're talking about. How well do they fit together? How well do they, in a lot of ways, not just complement each other, but I think in some ways strengthen each other?
Right.
That starts to matter more the more,
because you have less money to play with to make up some of that difference. No question.
Exactly.
So the way I look at this, like in this story, one of the things they talk about, how the Lakers should build around Luka. Again, none of this stuff is terribly new in the sense of what people have talked about. What does Luka really thrive with? Shooters and a vertical center, and
defensive players,
right? Two-way players that can shoot, and guys who can get above the rim. And so, by the way, that formula is not unique necessarily to him. Most ball-dominant players, that's been the formula for LeBron. I mean, maybe less about the vertical center, but find him defender, especially floor spacers, has always been something people have talked about putting next to LeBron. So again, some of these things, these two-way wings, all that kind of stuff, not necessarily unusual, but there's no question these are guys that you want around Luka because he creates so many shots for people, generates, doesn't need a lot of help generating shots, particularly out of the pick and roll. So you want to be able to pay off his ability to get in the lane and find any player anywhere on the floor because he's got incredible vision. That includes both above the rim and obviously around the arc. He has done well with a star player like Kyrie Irving, but he also has done well without star players like Kyrie Irving. If you can really fill in that two-way thing. Reeves can shoot. I think he's a good shooter. He's a good offensive player. He's a lot of things. He is certainly not a vertical center, and he's not, I would say, one of the scariest shooters in the NBA. He's a good shooter, but he's not
an elite shooter.
He's not an elite shooter. He's not, prime JJ Redick or something like that, or Steph, or guys like that. You don't think of him as a floor spacer in that way.
In particular, too, his strength as a shooter is not as a catch and shoot shooter. He is much, I think, more comfortable at the very least creating his own three, as opposed to really working as an off-ball catch and shoot threat.
At the very least, a lot of his offensive strength comes with having the ball in his hands. It's how he gets to the line. So I think your basic point here that while a creative coach, I think, can do a lot with Austin Reeves and Luka together, if you're going by that prescription, two-way wings who can shoot or vertical centers, it is not unfair to say that Austin is neither one of those things. So what do you do? Because it's a complex question, and it gets into a lot of the things about like how the Lakers are going to be organized, how you take advantage of whether the summer of 2026, or if you want to look a little further ahead, as this article does, the summer of 2027, which has been a big talking point since the end of last season. How do you fit Austin into those things?
Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first order. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first order.
Cooper Flagg is set up to succeed better than Luka Doncic in his rookie year.
Okay, define success.
That's my take. Success. He's set up to succeed, to develop faster and to be better, and to be better. The team's going to be better in his first year. And I don't think it's like close at all. You've got Jason Kidd as a player's coach, known for development. Luka Doncic had Rick Carlisle, who did not want to put the ball in Luka's hands until like December or January. And we like watched that. Like we were all there, front row seats, to watch like Luka Doncic have to like work his way to earn Rick Carlisle's trust to get to that point where he was giving him the keys to the offense. And he was like fighting against Harrison Barnes and Dennis Smith Jr. at the time. Luka is coming in, and Jason Kidd's already talking about putting the ball in his hands when Klay Thompson, Anthony Davis, and all these vets are on the team already. I think that just even that change is significant for a player of Cooper Flagg's caliber to come in and develop. And just look at the vets that Luka has compared to what Flagg is going to have. Luka had 40-year-old Dirk, which is a great vet to have to like learn from, but not necessarily to play with at that point. He had a 34-year-old JJ Barea.
Keep that to yourself.
Same kind of cotton. Dirk is the greatest human ever that has ever existed. But he had a 30-year-old DeAndre Jordan, a 32-year-old Wes Matthews. Like, okay, those are his vets. Cooper Flagg's vets are Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, like in their prime still, or maybe just past it. Klay Thompson, and he's still playing well, and they've all won multiple championships. Like the amount of Dwight Powell, the amount of championships on the Mavs roster right now compared to what it was then. I just think Flagg, and then look at all the rest of the roster too. Look at the centers that he's going to play with in Lively, who he already has a connection with. That's more than a connection than anybody else on the Mavs did with Luka. And so I just think that he's set up to succeed in a lot of ways, both development and team success, better than what Luka was.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, that team was a mess that Luka saved essentially, whereas this team was not even built for a Cooper Flagg, if that makes sense. Like that team was just desperate for a young guy to come in and be the face of the franchise, where this team wasn't even really looking for that and then got it. So I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I do think there might be some people who might disagree, because some people were in the camp of Dallas wasn't a good fit for Cooper because it wasn't a Washington or somebody or Brooklyn to where he could come in and just take a million shots. Because Luka did get, I just looked it up, he did get 16 shots a game his rookie season. Cooper's not going to get 16 shots a game. So even though they're going to put the ball in his hands and stuff, he's not going to get that many shots with Anthony Davis, Klay Thompson, if Kyrie comes back, D'Lo alone. It's just, he's not going to get that many shots. So he's going to impact winning and all of that. But if you are in the camp of, hey, I want my top draft pick to be at a place to where the ball is always in his hands and he gets a million shots a game and it's just that, but they suck, then that's not the situation. But I still agree with you.
Here's the thing about that, though, is I don't think Cooper Flagg is that 20-shot-a-game guy, even at his peak. Like, I don't think he'll end up being that player necessarily. I think he has a chance. to be a 20 shot a game guy where he's like the 40% usage percentage. Like I just don't think he's that guy. Like Luka
Not for
was.
a while, but I could see it later on. I could see a situation, but not right now.
I mean, how many guys even put up 20 shots a game this year?
Not many.
D'Lo.
D'Lo is not a chucker like we think.
I'm just kidding. You know I'm pro. Christian Wood. Another thing.
It was 7. SGA, LaMelo, Tyrese Maxey, Cade Cunningham, Luka, Anthony Edwards, Jason Tatum.
Yeah,
that would be a little surprising if you got to that.
Bankero and Giannis were like 19.7. So
yeah.
Christian Wood career high in shots per game, 15 and a half.
he took 15 and a half shots.
Yeah.
Another thing pro your point of that Cooper's situation is better is he doesn't have the awkwardness with, like, no matter how friends they were and are, Luka and Dennis, it was still like we just spent a top 10 draft pick on a point guard the year before in Dennis Smith Jr. And he clearly had the ball in his hands a lot. They ended up getting a top draft pick with him having it. I think Rick was, Rick enjoyed that experience there. And then, bam, you bring in Luka, who obviously needs the ball in his hands too. That was a little clunky, a little weird at first of like, what role is Dennis going to play? They got to commit to Luka fully anyway. Does that mean they're going to trade Dennis? Can't Dennis play off the ball? I remember that whole like debate thing of like, is he a good enough shooter and all this stuff. And now, like, I feel like he should be in the league and his defense really improved. It'd actually be kind of fun to think about back then. But yeah, so that was a little like weird and clunky for Luka, and Cooper's not going to have to deal with that with another young piece playing the same exact position.
I mean, he like Luka's team was transitioning from the Dirk era to whatever era was next. And I mean, Dennis was good his rookie year, but it was pretty clear and obvious that he might not have been what we were kind of hoping for. Whereas Flagg is coming into a team that wants to win a championship. So, and that's good for him. I agree with everything else said. That like I never agreed with this isn't actually a good landing spot for Flagg. I thought the exact opposite. I like the idea of him being somebody who his ideal is we talk about like Scottie Pippen, right? Like that's a big time comparison where he can play off ball and then play on ball and help you defensively and be like a Swiss Army knife. Like this is a perfect opportunity for him to develop like that.
Who do you think has more pressure on them to be good right away?
Flagg for sure.
Luka compared to Flagg?
There's situations. Moving up, giving up the unprotected pick to move up to get Luka, giving him the ball over Dennis Smith Jr. early on. You're hyping it up a lot, getting Luka, the Euro hype and all the stuff.
I think all that even said, I think Flagg still has more because he's number one pick. He's like talked about as the best prospect, college prospect since Anthony Davis, right? Like that hype is more than.
I think even if the Mavs got like the 10th overall pick, I think we'd be like Kasparas Jakučiotis has probably more pressure on him than Luka.
Could be good.
Well, okay, my only counterback is this Mavs team has such like big name players that if they come out and Anthony Davis is like top 5 player in the league, AD dominating, they're winning a ton of games, Clay's hitting a ton of threes,
in your top 100.
Like those are big names to where if they're playing really, really well and Cooper is struggling some, like the whole spotlight won't be on Cooper as much. Like there's other bigger names that could keep them winning and all this stuff. So that's my only counter. I think I still agree with you though.
I keep talking about Anthony Davis is the human meat shield of pressure for Cooper Flagg this year. Like he is going to stand right in the because it's all going to come on Anthony Davis. Like if he's out injured, it's all going to be on him. Like, well, what is Cooper Flagg supposed to do? This top 10 player is out all the time, and Anthony Davis, so
Nico too.
Oh yeah, well then obviously
yeah, it's tough.